You're watching Noir Street. I'm your host, Nero Wolfe. Every story hides a secret, and every shadow hides a clue. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Subscribe, tap the like button, and join us as we drift into mystery. Chapter 1. A favor with teeth rains stitched the streetlights into a bad confession when Wolfe got the call. It was a Tuesday, which in our house means two things. Wolfe had already decided what the world could do without him, and he was right. At 11, he had been in the plant rooms with Theodore Horstman, inspecting orchids the way a bishop inspects sinners. Sternly, with affection. At noon, he had eaten a lunch that would have made a Roman emperor sit up and ask for seconds. And then he had retired to the office to digest it, which is his way of saying he was going to sit in the red leather chair behind the desk and allow the universe to spin without instruction. I was the only moving part in the system. That is not bragging. It is a job description. The phone rang on my desk. I picked it up, said Goodwin, and listened to a voice that sounded as if it had been sharpened on a file. Archie, this is Gregory Larkin. That name didn't need a label. Gregory Larkin had money that behaved itself, a social position that didn't, and a habit of calling Wolfe only when the problem had teeth. He had once tried to hire Wolfe to prove his niece was not engaged to a man with a wife in Ohio. Wolfe had refused, on principle. It hadn't stopped Larkin from calling again. Yes, sir, I said. If you're selling virtue by the pound, you've got the wrong number. I'm not calling to be entertained, Larkin snapped. I'm calling because Harlan Pike is dead. Who? There was a pause that suggested he didn't care for being asked questions by hired help. Harlan Pike, you know the name. I didn't then, but I was about to. He's dead, Larkin repeated, as if the first time had been for practice. In his office. I want Nero Wolfe. I could have said that Nero Wolfe wanted a quiet afternoon and a second cup of coffee at 4. But when a man like Larkin calls, he doesn't mean want the way the rest of us do. He means I am accustomed to getting. Mr. Wolfe is engaged, I told him, in thought. This is not optional. Tell him Gregory Larkin asks a favor. That word, favor, had a way of hitting this house like a pebble against glass. It wasn't a Wolfe word. Wolfe accepted fees, not favors. He dispensed favors the way a banker dispenses smiles, sparingly and only when the ledger balanced. I'll inform him, I said. Do more than inform, Larkin said. Compel him. I'll be at my office in 20 minutes if he wants details. Pike's office, 61st Street, the Pike Building. Don't waste time. The line went dead. I sat there looking at the receiver for a second, as if it might start talking again on its own. Then I got up and went to Wolfe's office. It has a door you can close, which is more than you can say for most problems. I opened it without knocking. In this house, the knock is ceremonial, the opening is practical. Wolfe was in his chair, eyes half-lidded, hands steepled, a small mountain of paper before him that he was not looking at. He didn't glance up. What is it, Archie? Gregory Larkin, I said. That got his eyes open, not wide. Wolfe doesn't do wide. But open. He asks a favor, I added. Wolfe's mouth tightened, and not in a smile. That is impertinent. It's also persuasive, I said. He says a man named Harlan Pike is dead. In his office. Larkin wants you. Wolfe's stare took on the quality of a paperweight, heavy and intended to keep things from moving. Harlan Pike, I have heard the name. Good, I said, because I haven't yet. Wolfe didn't answer. He sat there while his mind did the kind of work mine hates, silent, internal, and probably expensive. Finally, he spoke. Gregory Larkin does not ask favors without reason. If he is asking, it is because he is afraid. Of what? Of inconvenience, Wolfe said. Of scandal, of exposure. Men like Larkin fear exposure more than death. That's comforting, I said. Do we go? Wolfe's eyes flicked toward the clock on the wall. It was 2:38. My schedule is inviolate. Your schedule doesn't include corpses, I pointed out. It includes my digestion, he growled. It includes my orchids, it includes my repose. And it includes money, I said. Larkin doesn't call to chat. If he wants you, there's a fee in it, probably large enough to purchase your digestion a small yacht. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. He knows my tricks and resents that they work sometimes. He opened his mouth, closed it, then spoke again. Very well, you will go. I blinked. Me? Certainly. I am not going to tramp through rain and vulgarity because Gregory Larkin is melodramatic. You will go to this office. You will observe. You will speak. You will return. Then I will decide what I will not do. That is Wolfe at his most Wolfe. He agrees to help by sending me into the line of fire. I have learned that arguing is like trying to wrestle a bear with a pocket comb. Fine, I said. Any instructions besides? Don't get shot. Yes, Wolfe said. Do not allow yourself to be detained. And do not, under any circumstances, commit us to anything. Understood, I said. I will merely involve us. I left. Fritz was in the hall, moving like a man whose feet had learned to be quiet, out of respect for a chef's dignity. He lifted an eyebrow. Trouble, Archie? Rainy kind, I said, and possibly dead. Fritz's face turned solemn. Fritz takes death personally. You will be careful. I always am, I said, which is the sort of lie people tell to keep the peace. 10 minutes later, I was in the elevator of the Pike building with rainwater on my hat brim and a bad feeling in my gut that wasn't from Fritz's lunch. The Pike building was respectable, with a lobby that smelled of polished brass and money. The kind of place where the doorman doesn't open the door so much as permit it to be opened. I gave my name at the desk, got a look that said no one named Goodwin belongs here, and then got waved through because death is the one letter of introduction that always works. Harlan Pike's office suite occupied the 10th floor. The corridor outside was crowded with people who had nowhere to stand, and no idea what to do with their hands. Clerks, assistants, a couple of men in suits trying to look as if they were not trying, and 2 uniformed cops who were openly bored. A tall man with a narrow face and the kind of eyes that have memorized too many secrets stepped out of the suite and looked at me as if I had been delivered by mistake. Can I help you? I'm Archie Goodwin. I said, here for Mr. Larkin. The narrow-faced man hesitated, then stepped aside. He's in Pike's office. I'm Benton Crowley, Pike's attorney. Good, I said. I love lawyers. They make everything simple by complicating it. Crowley didn't smile. This is serious. That depends, I said. For the corpse, it's final. For the rest of you, it's serious only if it becomes public. His eyes tightened at that. Lawyers have a sense of humor, but it lives in a safe deposit box. He led me into the inner office. Harlan Pike had money. You could tell from the carpet. It was the kind that muffles footsteps and conscience. His outer office was paneled, tasteful, and expensive in a quiet way. A young woman sat at a desk with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were pale. Her eyes were red, but her face was controlled, like someone who had learned early that crying doesn't get you anything but a headache. Crowley nodded to her. Miss Vale, this is Mr. Goodwin. She looked at me. From Nero Wolfe? His ambassador, I said. Archie Goodwin. You're Miss Vale? Yes. Her voice was steady, but it had a tremor underneath it like a violin string. Larkin is. She gestured toward the door to the inner office. Thanks, I said. Try not to faint until after I've had coffee. She blinked, not understanding the joke, which is always a bad sign. Crowley opened the door to Pike's private office, and I stepped inside. The smell hit first, not decay, not blood, but the heavy, sweet odor of expensive cigars mixed with damp wool. The room was large, with a mahogany desk that looked like it could stop a bullet if it had to, and bookshelves lined with volumes that had probably been purchased by the foot. Harlan Pike lay face down on the carpet in front of the desk. He looked, as Larkin had said, politely interrupted. There was no thrashing, no drama. His arms were at his sides, his legs were straight. He might have been taking a nap if it weren't for the angle of his head, and the fact that dead men don't nap, pinned to his lapel, His left lapel, where you might pin a boutonniere, was a little card. A thank you card. That was the first thing that made my skin prickle. Not the corpse. Corpses are crude. They tell you only one thing, a thank you card on a dead man's lapel tells you someone had time and taste, and a sense of occasion. I stepped closer. A policeman moved as if to stop me and then didn't, probably because he didn't have the energy. Gregory Larkin was by the window, looking out at the rain like a man watching his alibi wash away. He turned when I came in. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair and the kind of face that had been handsome once and now relied on money to maintain the illusion. "Goodwin," he said. Relief, irritation, and calculation all fought for space in his voice. "Wolfe didn't come." "No," I said. "He sent me to confirm the universe is still vulgar. Looks like it is." Crowley hovered by the desk like a legal guardian. A third man was there too, short, thick through the shoulders, with a hard mouth. He wore a suit that fit like armor and had eyes that said he had never lost an argument because he never stopped talking long enough to let the other man win. "I'm Inspector Kramer," he said, and I could have kissed him. The presence of Kramer in any mess is a guarantee that the mess has reached official status. "Archie Goodwin," I said, representing Nero Wolfe. Kramer's face soured. "Oh, for the love of—" "Nice to see you too," I said. Kramer jerked his head toward the body. "Your boss take jobs by telepathy now." "He takes them by fee," I said. "I'm here to see if this one's worth disturbing his digestion." Larkin stepped forward. It's worth." He stopped, probably because he remembered the law was in the room. "It's important," he finished. "Everything is important to somebody," I said, "including that." I nodded at the thank you card. Kramer grunted. "You want to look at it? Go ahead." I already did. That was unusual. Kramer is not a man who invites civilians to touch evidence. It meant either he was too tired to fight or he wanted Wolfe involved. And if Kramer wants Wolfe involved, it's because the case is already giving him indigestion. I leaned over and read the card without touching it. It was white, thick stock, with a small embossed border. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, and cold. "Thank you for your kindness." No flourish, no sentiment, just that line, and the period sat there like a nail. Kindness always wants interest. Wolfe had muttered on the phone, and now I understood why. Someone had made a joke, and the joke had killed a man. On the desk, directly above the body, sat a ledger. It was thick, black, and labeled in block letters, "Favors." I looked at it, and then at Larkin. "That yours?" I asked. Larkin's eyes flicked away. "Number," Crowley said. "It belonged to Pike. He kept records. He was meticulous. Meticulous people get murdered neatly," I said. "What's in it?" Kramer said. "We haven't opened it." I stared at him. "You're kidding." He scowled. "We're not kidding. Pike's attorney here says it's privileged or proprietary or some other nonsense, and until I have a warrant," Crowley's mouth tightened. "It may contain confidential client information." Kramer's eyes flashed. "And it may contain the name of the man who killed him, or the man Pike thought would kill him," I said. "Big difference." Kramer glared at me. "You want to earn your keep. Tell Wolfe to get down here and stop playing emperor." "Wolfe doesn't go anywhere without good reason," I said, "and without being asked properly." Larkin's voice came sharp. "Ask properly," I called. "You demanded," I said. "Wolfe is sensitive to manners. It's one of his few weaknesses besides orchids and food." Larkin's jaw tightened, but he controlled himself. "That took practice. What do you need?" I glanced at the desk again. There was a key taped beneath the ledger, the tape crooked, like it had been slapped on in haste. It was a small key, the kind that opened something private, drawer, safe deposit box, a box of letters you don't want your wife to find. "What's that key for?" I asked. Kramer said, "We don't know." Crowley said, "It wasn't there when I arrived. It appeared later." That got my attention. "Earlier when?" Crowley hesitated. "When I arrived, before the police had everyone boxed in." "And when was that?" 2 hours ago, Crowley said. More. Who found the body? I asked. The young woman's voice came from the doorway. I did. I turned. Miss Vale stood there, pale but upright. I came in with Mr. Pike's mail. He didn't answer. I went in. He was there. Did you touch anything? Kramer barked. She flinched, but she held her ground. No, Inspector, I didn't. I ran out and called Mr. Crowley and Mr. Larkin. Mr. Pike told me if anything ever happened, I was to call them. Kramer looked at her like she had committed a personal offense by following instructions. I said, so Pike had contingency plans. Larkin's voice was low. Harlan was careful. Careful doesn't prevent a thank. You card, I said. I nodded at the card again. What's the kindness? What favor was he thanked for? No one answered. That told me it was either something they didn't know, or something they didn't want to say in front of a cop. He walked to the desk and looked down at the ledger. I still didn't touch it. Wolfe would have liked that. He is big on not leaving fingerprints where they can be used to annoy you later. The cover was worn at the edges, handled often. The letters' favors were stamped, not written. Like Pike, wanted it to look official, like a file. What did Pike do? I asked. Crowley said. He ran a consulting firm. What kind? Crowley's mouth did a lawyerly little dance. Business consulting. That covers everything from teaching a man how to tie his tie to helping him buy a senator, I said. Larkin said. He helped people. He made introductions. He smoothed difficulties. Kindness, I said. And let it hang, Kramer said. He was a fixer. Miss Vale stiffened. He was a problem solver. Save thing, I said. One sounds better on a letterhead. I took in the room. There were no signs of a struggle. Pike's chair was pushed back as if he had stood up. A glass sat on the desk, empty, with a faint ring of moisture. A decanter of water stood nearby. No whiskey, no brandy, no drama. That could mean poison, or it could mean Pike was a health man in a city that doesn't tolerate them. What did the medical examiner say? I asked Kramer. Not here yet, he growled. We called. He's busy with other dead people. New York is generous that way, I said. I looked again at the key under the tape. If Crowley said it wasn't there earlier, someone had put it there since. That meant either the killer did it for effect or someone else did it for insurance. And insurance is a word that belongs in a room with lawyers and rich men, I said. Larkin, when did you last see Pike alive? Larkin's eyes met mine. There was something there, anger, maybe, or fear. Yesterday. Where? Here, he said. In this office. What about? Larkin hesitated. Just a fraction. Busyness, of course, I said. Everything is business until it becomes murder, Crowley said. Mr. Pike had dealings with many people, and now one of them has dealt with him permanently, I said. Kramer's patience snapped. Goodwin, are you going to call Wolfe, or are you going to stand there making wisecracks? I'm going to do both, I said. But first, I'm going to ask one more question. I turned to Miss Vale. Miss Vale, you said you came in with the mail. Was that usual? Yes. Did Pike receive a thank you card in the mail today? I asked. Her eyes widened. Number I didn't see. Think, I said gentler. Did you bring in any small envelope like that? She swallowed. There was a small envelope, no return address. I put it on his desk with the others. Kramer's head jerked. You didn't mention that. She looked at him, offended. You didn't ask. Except it's pinned to his lapel and somebody had to do that. Larkin's voice was strained. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, I said, that the message was meant to be seen. Maybe by Pike, maybe by someone else, maybe by you. Larkin's face went tight as wire. I nodded at the ledger. And that ledger is either the reason he's dead or the reason someone wants him dead. And that key is either the key to the answer or a key meant to send us somewhere else. Crowley said, You're making assumptions. I'm making observations, I corrected. Assumptions come later, when Wolfe is comfortable. Kramer snorted. Call him. I did. I stepped into the outer office, where Miss Vale's desk sat like a little island of normal life marooned in a sea of police. She watched me with anxious eyes, as if Wolfe's voice could travel through the wire and set things right. I dialed Wolfe's number at the brownstone. Fritz answered, as he always does, and his voice held the calm of a man who believes dinner will happen, no matter what. Mr. Goodwin, put Wolfe on, I said. And tell him I'm not asking, I'm reporting. A pause, then the familiar shift as Fritz carried the phone. Wolfe's voice came on, heavy and annoyed. Yes, Archie. Pike is dead, I said. Face down on his carpet. No struggle, no robbery, a thank. Your card is pinned to his lapel. It says, "Thank you for your kindness." There's a ledger on the desk labeled favors. There's a key taped under it. Pike's attorney says the key wasn't there earlier. The secretary says the card came in the mail today. Kramer is here and in a mood that suggests he wants you to fix his headache. There was silence. Then Wolfe said, softly, "A thank. You card." Yes. And a ledger labeled favors. Yes. And a key placed after the discovery. Seems so. Wolfe's breath came out like a man who had just smelled something unpleasant but interesting. This is theatrical. That's what worries me, I said. Killers who stage scenes either want credit or want distraction. Wolfe muttered. Kindness always wants interest. He had said it before, but now it sounded less like a proverb and more like a diagnosis. What do you want me to do? I asked. Return at once, Wolfe said. I blinked. You don't want me to. I want you to return, Wolfe repeated, crisp. I will consider. Do not commit us. Too late, I said. Kramer knows my name. That's practically a contract. Wolfe ignored that. Return. He hung up. I stood there with the receiver in my hand and stared at it. Wolfe's method is to gather facts and then refuse to move until the facts come to him. Unfortunately, facts have legs, and sometimes they run away while he is sitting. Kramer looked at me like I had been gone a week. Well, Wolfe wants me back, I said. Kramer's face went purple. Back where? Home, I said. He's going to think. Crowley said, that's all, he won't come. He didn't say, I said. But I'll tell you this, he's interested. Larkin stepped close, lowering his voice. Goodwin, you must tell Wolfe that Harlan Pike had certain information, dangerous information. About what? I asked. Larkin's eyes darted toward Kramer, then away. About favors, about people, about debts, the ledger, I said. Larkin's jaw tightened. Yes, and the key. Larkin hesitated. I don't know what it opens, I swear it. That sounded almost convincing, almost. Kramer barked. Larkin, you want to whisper, whisper to me. Larkin straightened. Inspector, I've told you what I can. Kramer looked ready to explode, but he held it, barely. Then he turned on me again. Goodwin, tell Wolfe if he doesn't come, I'll drag him. You can try, I said, but bring a forklift. Kramer growled, something I can't print, and waved a hand at the door. Get out. I left. Rain was still falling, steady as a tax collector on the ride back downtown. I kept seeing that thank you card, neat and polite, pinned to a dead man like a decoration, kindness, favors, a key that appeared after the fact. Someone had killed Harlan Pike with good manners, and in New York, good manners are always suspicious. When I got back to the brownstone, Fritz took my coat as if it were only water and not trouble. I went straight to Wolfe's office. He was in his chair, eyes narrowed, fingers steepled again. On the desk in front of him was a notepad with 3 words written in his bold hand. Favors. Keycard. He looked up at me. Archie, he said, we are being invited. Invited to what? I asked. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. Just a little, to participate in an economy of obligation. A man has been murdered, and the instrument of his death is not a knife or a bullet, but a moral account. He leaned back, heavy and sure, like a judge about to announce sentence. "You will telephone Mr. Larkin," Wolfe said. "You will tell him that if he wishes my assistance, he will come here, and he will come at once." "And if he refuses?" I asked. Wolfe's mouth tightened into something that might have been a smile if Wolfe believed in them. "Then he will discover that favors, like teeth, can bite the hand that offers them." I grinned, because when Wolfe gets that tone, something is about to happen, something that will cost me sleep, patience, and possibly skin, but will also, if we're lucky, end with a murderer in the chair opposite Wolfe's desk. I reached for the phone. Outside, the rain kept stitching the city together. Inside, Nero Wolfe began to pull at the threads. Chapter 2, The Ledger of Debts. If you've never watched Nero Wolfe prepare to be obliging, you might picture a tiger deciding whether to let a goat borrow money. Wolfe doesn't rush into a case. He allows it to come to him, wipe its feet, and state its business in a civil tone. Gregory Larkin, to his credit, arrived at the brownstone within 40 minutes, dripping rain and displeasure, with Benton Crowley tagging along like a legal shadow, and Miss Vale behind them, looking as if she'd been sent to escort a bomb. Wolfe received them in the office. He did not stand. Wolfe stands for exactly 3 reasons: orchids, meals, and outrage. This situation, though it involved all 3 indirectly, was still in the evaluation stage. Larkin began with the kind of briskness men use when they're afraid their fear will show if they slow down. "Wolfe, a man is dead. Harlan Pike, you know the implications." Wolfe's eyelids lowered. "I know only what my assistant reported. I know also that you attempted to command me. I attempted to enlist you. You attempted to compel me." Wolfe's voice had the pleasantness of a guillotine. "Mr. Larkin, you are in my house. You will be precise, and you will be candid." Crowley cleared his throat, a sound like paper being filed. "Mr. Wolfe, we are prepared to retain you at your usual rate, and beyond it, if necessary." Wolfe's eyes flicked to him. "What is my usual rate?" "Mr. Crowley." Crowley hesitated. $10,000. Wolfe nodded. "Correct. You will double it." Larkin's face twitched. "That's outrageous." Wolfe looked mildly interested, the way he looks when Archie is about to say something regrettable. "If it is outrageous, you are free to leave." They didn't leave. Wolfe leaned a fraction forward. Now, Harlan Pike maintained a ledger labeled favors. "I want it." Crowley stiffened. "Inspector Kramer." "Inspector Kramer is a vulgarity," Wolfe said. "I do not conduct my affairs through vulgarities. The ledger is either in your possession, or it will soon be. You will deliver it to me." Crowley's lips tightened. "It may contain confidential information." Wolfe's eyes did not waver. "It contains information purchased by death. Confidentiality has been cancelled." Larkin cut in, voice low. "Wolfe, if that ledger becomes public—" "It will not," Wolfe said. "Unless you force it to. You have 2 choices: assist me, or consult your attorney about how to survive your own reputation." Crowley looked as though he'd like to object on principle, but the trouble with principles is that they don't pay bail. Miss Vale finally spoke, her voice clear but small. "Mr. Pike kept the ledger in his desk. The police haven't taken it yet." Wolfe's gaze shifted to her. "And why, Miss Vale, have they not taken it?" She swallowed. "Mr. Crowley told them they needed a warrant." Wolfe's mouth made a sound that might have been approval if you squinted. "Very well, Mr. Goodwin. We shall have the ledger and the key." I had been standing near the door, behaving. "The key is taped under it," I said, "and if it showed up after the body was found, somebody wanted it found." Wolfe nodded. "Then it will accompany it." "Go," Larkin sputtered. "Go, where?" Wolfe turned on him. "To Mr. Pike's office, of course. You will retrieve the ledger and key and bring them here, quietly, immediately." Crowley opened his mouth, and Wolfe shut it with a look. "If Inspector Kramer objects," Wolfe added, "inform him that his objection has been noted and ignored. Mr. Goodwin is experienced with Inspector Kramer." "That's true. Kramer has objected to me so often it's practically a greeting." Half an hour later I was back uptown, with Larkin and Crowley in tow and Miss Vale trailing like someone who knew where the bodies were and wished she didn't. Kramer met us at Pike's office door with the expression of a man who has been asked to swallow a piano. "Goodwin," he growled. "Where's Wolfe?" "At home," I said, breathing superior air. Kramer's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you here?" "To borrow a book," I said. "A black one labeled Favors." Crowley stepped forward. "Inspector, as Mr. Pike's counsel, I am taking custody of certain private documents." Kramer's face went red. "Custody? A man's dead. That ledger is evidence. So is half of New York," I said. "If you try to carry it all, you'll need a bigger precinct." Kramer glared at me, then at Crowley, then at Larkin. He knew something. Kramer isn't bright like Wolfe, but he's been around long enough to smell money and fear. "Get it," he said finally. "But if it leaves this building, I'll have warrants before your fancy boss finishes his coffee." "We'll race you," I said. Miss Vale led us into Pike's private office. The body was gone now, carted off to let the living argue over paperwork. Without the corpse, the place looked less like a crime scene and more like a boardroom that had lost its soul. I went to the desk, opened the drawer, and there it was. A thick, black ledger, like a Bible with bad intentions. The key was still taped beneath the desktop where I'd seen it, as if someone had wanted to make sure it was found. I didn't say that out loud. Not yet. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe took the ledger the way a surgeon takes a scalpel. Not eagerly. Wolfe doesn't do eager, but with a quiet respect for the instrument. He had me place it on the desk. Then he adjusted his chair, opened the cover, and began to read. I have seen Wolfe read everything from Greek poetry to a restaurant menu, as if it were a legal document. But with the ledger, he read like a man listening to a confession he already suspects is false. The pages were ruled. Each entry was in Pike's hand, small, precise, and maddeningly calm. Names ran down the left column, dates marched beside them. Then a short notation, what Pike had done. It read like a choir of desperate voices, only the voices were disguised as ink. Dane, 3, divided by 14, divided by 19, introduced to bank officer. Overdraft forgiven. M. Dane. 9 divided by 2, divided by 22, arranged dismissal of complaint. Witness relocated. Kendrick, 6 divided by 9, divided by 20, secured license approval. Inspector persuaded. S. Kendrick, 1 divided by 11, divided by 25, reminder delivered. Payment insured. Wolfe's eyes paused on the repeat names, and I saw the pattern as he did. Pike didn't just do favors, he revisited them, like a man watering plants he intended to harvest. Wolfe said, without looking up, "Mr. Pike practiced a species of kindness that matures." "Like cheese," I said, "or like blackmail." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Not blackmail. Not always leverage." He turned a page. Another. The entries were not extravagant. Pike wasn't writing novels. He didn't need to. The people in the book already knew the plot. At the back, Wolfe stopped. One page had been torn out roughly. With haste, the ragged edge remained, and on the torn stub, a single word had been scorched into the paper. Leverage, not written, burned. The letters were brown, black, as if someone had pressed a heated object to the sheet. It wasn't accidental. Accidents don't spell. I leaned in. That's not a cigarette slip. When Wolfe lowers his voice, it means his mind has leaned forward. This is a signpost. It declares motive. It declares method. It may declare warning. Warning to whom? Wolfe didn't answer. He rarely answers the first time. Not because he can't, but because he prefers the sound of his own silence when it's thinking. He closed the ledger gently. Now the key. I handed it to him. He turned it between thick fingers, examined the cut. "This is not an office key," he said. "It is too small. It is cut for a private lock. Something concealed." He rose. When Wolfe rises, the room changes. Fritz appeared at the door, instantly, because Fritz has a sixth sense for Wolfe's movements. Wolfe ignored him and moved to the desk drawer on the right, the one he uses for stationery and his own small secrets. He did not try it there. Instead, he went to the side table by the window, where I keep the files and where Wolfe pretends he never touches anything. There was a shallow drawer in that table. Wolfe had never, in my hearing, referred to it. That meant he knew it existed. He inserted the key and turned it. The fit was too clean to be coincidence. The drawer opened. Inside was a plain envelope, and beneath it, a thick packet of photographs held together with a rubber band. Wolfe took out the envelope first. It contained nothing but a folded sheet of paper. Blank, a decoy, I said. A gesture, Wolfe corrected. Now the photographs. He laid them on the desk and spread them, one by one. They were glossy, professional. The first showed a man in evening clothes, shaking hands with a judge at a charity dinner. But the smile on the man's face was a fraction too wide. The way a smile looks when it has been rehearsed for witnesses. The next showed a woman in a fur coat stepping from a car with a city official. Her head was turned, her eyes caught mid-blink, the kind of image you'd never choose for an album unless you hadn't been asked. Another showed a young man with a priest, laughing, while a second figure stood in the background with his head lowered. Every photo had the same quality, a scene of normalcy that felt staged, like hostages allowed to wave for the camera. Social snapshots, I said. Only nobody looks happy enough to frame them. Wolfe's eyes moved over them like a microscope. These are not souvenirs, they are proof. Proof of what? Association, Wolfe said. Presence, opportunity, familiarity, the sort of thing that, displayed at the correct moment, becomes leverage, I said. Wolfe's mouth flattened. Precisely. I looked at the pile again and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain outside. Pike hadn't just recorded favors. He had curated the evidence of them, the way a collector catalogues rare insects. In this town, gratitude didn't kneel. It squeezed. The doorbell rang downstairs. Fritz went to answer it. A minute later, he returned with a look that said the universe had delivered something unpleasant, but unavoidable. Inspector Kramer is here, Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe did not look pleased. He never does when the police arrive without an appointment. Send him up, he said. Kramer came in like a storm with a badge. He saw the ledger on the desk and the photographs spread like playing cards, and his eyes narrowed. Having fun? He demanded. Wolfe's tone was mild. I am being thorough. Kramer stabbed a finger at the ledger. That book is evidence. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Then you will acquire evidence properly with warrants and procedure. Until then, it is information. Kramer's jaw tightened. You can't just... Inspector, Wolfe said, and suddenly his voice had weight. A man is dead. If you wish to arrest me, do so. If you wish to solve the murder, you will allow me to examine what your own clumsiness would mishandle. Kramer glared, and for a second I thought he might try to out. Stare Wolfe, which is like trying to out. Drink a whale instead, he grunted. What did you find? Wolfe nodded at the scorched stub. A word and a method. Kramer leaned closer, saw the burned letters, and his face changed, just slightly. He had seen enough ugliness in his time to recognize a warning when it was dressed in stationery. Leverage, he muttered. Wolfe picked up one of the photographs and held it out, not offering it so much as allowing it to be seen. And this. Kramer's eyes scanned the photo. Who are these people? Wolfe set it down. That, Inspector, is an excellent question, and it will be answered. If you will refrain from stepping on the evidence with your large feet. Kramer's mouth twisted. You got names in that book. Many, Wolfe said. Some repeated. Mr. Pike did not forget his kindnesses. He cultivated them. Kramer snorted. So he was shaking down half the city. Wolfe's eyes chilled. Do not simplify it. Mr. Pike kept accounts. Accounts must be settled. And someone settled his, I said. Wolfe's gaze flicked to me, approving the addition. He turned back to Kramer. Inspector, I will require certain facts that you can obtain more quickly than I. You will learn how Mr. Pike died. You will learn who entered and left his office today. With times, you will learn whether any of the names in this ledger have been contacted by your men. Kramer frowned. Why should I do your errands? Because, Wolfe said. If you do not, you will spend the next month arresting the wrong man while the correct one laughs. Kramer's nostrils flared. Then he did something rare. He nodded. All right, he growled. But if you're holding out, Inspector, Wolfe said. I do not hold out. I accumulate. Kramer left, unhappy but moving. When the door closed, Wolfe sat back and looked at the ledger as if it were an animal he had trapped and was deciding how to feed. Archie, he said. Mr. Pike was not murdered for money. He was murdered for balance. Balance, I asked. He owed someone. Wolfe's eyes rested on the burned word again, or someone owed him and refused to pay. He tapped the ledger once with a thick finger. Find me Gregory Larkin. Already found, I said. He's probably chewing his own nails in the front room. Bring him, Wolfe said. And bring Miss Vale as well. We will begin by determining why a man who traded in obligations was careless enough to die with his accounts open. I went out to the front room and found Larkin standing by the window, watching the rain as if it might wash away his name. Miss Vale sat stiffly on the sofa, hands folded, face pale. I said, Wolfe wants you in the office. Larkin turned sharp. What did he find? I shrugged. A ledger full of debts and a word that should be printed on your forehead. His eyes narrowed. What word? Leverage, I said. Miss Vale flinched, just a little, and Larkin saw it. So did I, and that small flinch, in a room full of secrets, felt like the first honest thing I'd seen all day. Chapter 3. The woman who owed twice the next morning. Wolfe stayed home, which is what he calls courage. He had his orchids at 11, his lunch at 1, and at 2:30 he permitted the murder to re-enter his life in the form of information. I supplied some of it. Kramer supplied the rest, grudgingly, by phone. Me says Pike didn't die of a fall, Kramer reported. He was poisoned, fast acting, not arsenic, not cyanide, something newer. They're running tests. Administered how? I asked. Probably in water, Kramer said. There was a glass on the desk. No prints worth keeping, and don't get cute. Goodwin, your fat boss can't just guess poisons. Wolfe, listening on the speaker, said, I do not guess, Inspector, I infer. Kramer made a sound that could have come from a garbage disposal. Then infer this. Pike had visitors yesterday. 4 confirmed. His attorney, Crowley, Gregory Larkin, a delivery kid with documents, and a woman, Rita Crowley. I blinked. Crowley again. Related. Wife, Kramer said. Or ex-wife, or something. She worked for Pike assistant. First one to see the body after that Vale girl found it and started screaming. She came running in like she owned the place. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Bring her. Kramer barked a laugh. To you. She's not your client. Bring her to my house, Wolfe said, as if inviting a woman to be interrogated were a social courtesy. Or I shall come to her. Kramer paused. You'll come. Wolfe's nostrils flared. Do not force me into heroics, Inspector, Kramer grunted. I'll see what I can do. He hung up. Wolfe sat for a moment without speaking, staring at the ledger as if it might confess by sheer intimidation. Then he said, Archie, we will go to Mr. Pike's office. I gaped. You just threatened heroics and then volunteered. I did not volunteer, Wolfe said. I am avoiding delay. If this Rita Crowley is important, she will not come here willingly, and I intend to see the box of letters you mentioned to me. I mentioned a box of letters. You will, Wolfe said. You will mention it after you see it. That is one of Wolfe's infuriating tricks. He predicts my observations and then treats them like orders. So at 3 o'clock, with the sky still spitting rain and my optimism already drowned, I escorted Wolfe uptown. He looked like a prosperous bear in a good overcoat, moving reluctantly, but with authority, and everyone who saw him made the small adjustments people make around large objects that might fall. At Pike's office, the lobby had acquired the tense hush of places where money has been frightened. The receptionist tried to object, then saw Wolfe's face and decided not to become history. We were admitted. Miss Vale was at her desk, paler than yesterday. When she saw Wolfe, she stood up too quickly, as if his presence meant something would be resolved, simply by being stared at. "Mr. Wolfe," she said, and there was real relief in it. Wolfe inclined his head, barely. "Miss Vale, where is Mrs. Crowley?" Miss Vale hesitated. "In Mr. Pike's inner office." She insisted on going through his things. Wolfe's eyebrows rose a fraction. "Indeed." We went in. Rita Crowley was standing at a side table near the window, arranging papers with the precision of a florist making a funeral wreath. She was in her 30s, well dressed, with dark hair pinned in a way that was meant to look careless and didn't. Her face was composed in a grief expression that had been practiced in mirrors, eyes softened, mouth subdued, skin carefully arranged to suggest sleeplessness without suffering its consequences. She turned when we entered and offered a small, controlled gasp. "Mr. Wolfe." Her voice had the same polish as her makeup. It didn't wobble. Real grief wobbles. "Mrs. Crowley," Wolfe said. He did not offer sympathy. He offers solutions. "You worked for Mr. Pike." "Yes," she said at once. "I was his assistant. Yet your name is Crowley." Her eyes flicked, quick as a card trick. "I kept my married name. It was simpler." "Perhaps," Wolfe said. "Is it also simpler to work for a man who kept a ledger of obligations?" Her chin lifted. "Mr. Pike helped people." I watched her hands. They were folded now, but the fingers were too still, like a dancer waiting for music. Her eyes kept darting to the side table where a shoebox sat. Half open, Wolfe saw it too. "What is in that box?" he asked. Rita's smile tightened. "Letters, notes. People wrote to thank him." "Show me." She hesitated. Wolfe didn't move. He simply waited, which is one of his most brutal talents. Silence is a weapon in his hands. Finally, Rita slid the box toward him. Inside were thank you letters, neatly sorted, each in an envelope stamped and filed with a system of tags. Some were handwritten on fancy paper, some were typed, a few were cheap stationery, but every single one had been preserved like evidence. Wolfe lifted one, read a line, replaced it, lifted another. His face did not change, but the air in the room did. It thickened. "This is not sentiment," he said at last. "It is inventory." Rita's voice sharpened. Despite the practiced softness, he was organized. Wolfe looked up. Who hated him? The question hit her like a slap. "No one," she said too fast. "Why would anyone hate Harlan? He helped everyone." Wolfe's gaze held her. "Then why did you flinch?" "I didn't." "You did," Wolfe said mildly. "You behaved as if I had asked for a name you hoped I would not mention." Rita's eyes widened, then narrowed, then settled into that polished calm again. "People were grateful," she insisted, "even the ones who needed discretion." "Discretion is not gratitude," Wolfe said. "It is fear in a tuxedo." I leaned in and pulled a letter from the top of the newest stack. The paper felt stiff, the way paper does before it's been handled. The ink was dark and fresh enough that it seemed to shout. Across the page, in heavy block letters, it read, "You remember what I did. No signature, no greeting, no closing, just the line, like a hook." Rita's eyes snapped to it, her pupils tightened. "That was not a thank you," I said. Rita swallowed. "It came yesterday." "Yesterday when?" Wolfe asked. Her mouth opened, closed. "In the morning mail. Miss Vale brought it." Wolfe asked without looking away. "Yes," Rita said. "Then it arrived before Mr. Pike died." Wolfe said. "Did he see it?" Rita's voice thinned. "I don't know. He didn't show it to me." Wolfe's eyes dropped to the letter again. "A demand, not gratitude. It asserts a debt." Rita's lips tightened. It could have been a joke. Wolfe's gaze rose. "Do you find it humorous? Number." "Then do not call it a joke," Wolfe said. "Who sent it?" "I don't know." Wolfe's patience did not change. His patience is not a mood, it's a tool. "Mrs. Crowley, you were present yesterday." Rita hesitated. I was in the outer office most of the day. Did you enter this room? Wolfe asked. She lifted her chin. Yes, twice. Once with documents, once to bring him water. I felt something click in my head. Water. Glass poison. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. You brought him water? Yes. Her voice tightened. He asked, did you pour it? Ritter's hands made a small movement, almost unconscious, toward the sideboard where the decanter had sat yesterday. Yes. Wolfe's voice stayed calm. Did anyone else handle the decanter? I don't know. Wolfe nodded once, as if confirming a number in a column. Who else had access to this office? Rita's composure slipped a hair. Mr. Pike had visitors, Mr. Larkin. My husband, Mr. Crowley, the delivery boy. And you, I said. And maybe someone else if they were let in. Rita's eyes flashed. You're implying... I'm implying nothing, Wolfe said. I am observing. He tapped the letter with one thick finger. This arrived yesterday morning. Mr. Pike died yesterday afternoon. Someone reminded him of a debt. Someone administered poison. These events are connected. Ritter's face went paler under its careful paint. Harlan didn't blackmail people. Wolfe's eyebrows rose. Did he not? He kept records, she insisted. For protection, people asked him for help, and they panicked later. They wanted proof, they had asked. Proof he had done it. He kept things so no one could rewrite the story. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. A generous interpretation. Ritter's voice cracked just once, the first honest sound she had made. You don't understand in this town. Gratitude doesn't kneel, it squeezes. People smile while they tighten the rope. Wolfe's gaze held her. You are afraid. Rita's mouth trembled, then steadied. I'm careful. That is not the same, Wolfe said. She drew in a breath. If you keep digging, you'll bring down people who don't fall quietly. Wolfe's expression hardened, slow and sure. Mrs. Crowley, if Mr. Pike traded in leverage, he has left leverage behind, and someone killed him to control it. Then back to Wolfe. I didn't kill him, she said, quick and fierce. But I owe twice, Mr. Wolfe. I owe my husband, and I owed Harlan. And if you make me choose, I might not choose what you want. Wolfe leaned back, and for an instant his face showed something like satisfaction. Not pleasure, but recognition. He had found the scent he wanted. Excellent, he said softly. Now we are approaching candor. He rose, and the movement made Rita flinch again, as if she expected the room to snap shut. Archie, Wolfe said, take that box. Rita's eyes widened. You can't. I can, Wolfe said. I am doing it. He turned to her. Mrs. Crowley, you will come to my house this evening at 8. You will bring your husband, Mr. Benton Crowley, and you will answer my questions without cosmetics. Rita's mouth opened. No sound came out. Wolfe looked at me. And you will telephone Inspector Kramer, inform him that we have acquired additional evidence, and that if he wishes to remain relevant, he will provide me the toxicology result as soon as it is available. I tucked the box under my arm. It felt heavier than paper. Wolfe headed for the door, then paused and looked back at Rita Crowley. Mrs. Crowley, he said, manners are admirable, but they are also convenient hiding places. Do not hide too long. We left her standing in Pike's office, grief still on her face like makeup, too neat, too practiced, while outside, New York kept smiling through the rain, tightening its rope one polite inch at a time. Chapter 4. A clinic, a ghost, a smile. Wolfe does not like leaving the house twice in one day. He considers it a form of surrender, but the Mercy Row Clinic had a way of making itself unavoidable. It sat in the ledger like a fat thumbprint. The entry was 3 years old, and written with Pike's tidy restraint. Mercy Row Clinic, 4 divided by 18 divided by 23. Donation arranged. Zoning obstacle removed. Press handled. Then, 6 months later, Mercy Row Clinic, 11 divided by 7 divided by 23. Follow, up implemented. Cooperation secured. Wolfe stared at those 2 lines for a long moment, as if they were a riddle printed on a menu. Finally, he said, "Follow, up implemented, cooperation secured." This is not note-taking, it is bookkeeping. And Mercy Row is what? I asked. A clinic, Wolfe said, as if clinics were a personal inconvenience. In the river wards, it serves the poor. Then why would Pike bother? I asked. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Because the poor are useful. They are grateful. And gratitude, in the hands of a man like Pike, becomes pliable. So at 4 o'clock, while Wolfe would have preferred to be digesting, we were riding downtown in Fritz's taxi arrangement, with Wolfe brooding beside me like a well-fed storm cloud. The rain had eased into a damp grey drizzle that made the city look as if it had been scrubbed and found wanting. Mercy Row Clinic was a squat brick building wedged between a pawn shop and a defunct bakery. A faded sign promised dignity, which in New York is always an optimistic claim. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and tired people. The waiting room was full. Mothers with children, men with hollow cheeks, an old woman clutching a paper bag as if it contained her last hope. Wolfe's presence drew eyes the way a tuxedo draws eyes in a soup kitchen. He ignored them. Wolfe ignores discomfort, unless it's his. A young receptionist looked up, startled. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "You can fetch Dr. Margot Hale." The receptionist blinked. "Do you have an appointment?" She disappeared through a door and returned with a woman in her 40s wearing a white coat and the expression of someone who has learned to expect bad news as routine. Dr. Margot Hale was tall, angular, with iron-grey hair pulled back tight, and eyes that didn't waste time on pleasantries. She looked Wolfe over, then looked at me, and her gaze sharpened, as if she had recognized the species. "Trouble." "I'm Dr. Hale," she said. "Who are you?" "Nero Wolfe," Wolfe said. "This is Archie Goodwin. We are here regarding Harlan Pike." The name hit her like a draft. Her jaw tightened, just slightly, and her eyes flicked toward the waiting room as if she didn't want the sick to hear it. "Not here," she said. "Come." She led us down a narrow hall to a small office with a desk, a filing cabinet, and a window that looked onto a brick wall. She shut the door behind us with more force than necessary. "Harlan Pike is dead," I said, watching her face. Her lips pressed together. I heard. Wolfe sat without being asked. He has never let furniture make decisions. "Dr. Hale, Mr. Pike appears in a ledger as a benefactor of this clinic." Her eyes hardened. "He donated." "Yes." Wolfe tilted his head and bragged bigger. A flicker crossed her face, annoyance maybe, or something like shame. "The donation saved us," she said. "We were drowning. The city was delaying permits. Equipment was failing. We had a line of patients out the door and no money to treat them. And Mr. Pike arrived," Wolfe said, "bearing salvation." Dr. Hale's mouth twisted. "He arrived bearing cameras." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Ah," she took a breath. "He arranged a gala. He called reporters. He made speeches about compassion. He wrote checks large enough to make people clap. And afterward," Wolfe prompted. Dr. Hale's gaze dropped to her desk. Her voice lowered. "Afterward he came back. To observe his good work," I asked. "To collect," she said quietly. Wolfe's fingers steepled. "Explain." Dr. Hale leaned forward, hands flat on the desk, knuckles whitening. "Patients here are vulnerable. Not just poor, vulnerable. Immigration issues, custody disputes, addictions, medical conditions. They don't want employers to know. Pike found that vulnerability and made it useful." I felt my stomach tighten. "He visited patients?" "Yes," she said. "Not openly. He'd show up with that smile, polite, friendly, like he was part of the treatment plan. He'd sit at the bedside and say, 'Just checking in.'" Wolfe's eyes grew cold. "And add, 'On what you owe.'" Dr. Hale met his gaze. "Yes." She stood abruptly and went to the file cabinet. She yanked open a drawer and rummaged, then pulled out a folder and slammed it onto the desk. We tried to stop him. We told him he couldn't talk to patients without consent. He laughed. He said he had consent. She opened the folder and pushed a paper toward Wolfe. It was a form, official, looking clinic letterhead. The kind of paper people sign without reading because the nurse is smiling and the waiting room is full. Across the bottom, in bold type, was a line about future cooperation. Authorization to share information, as needed with clinic partners and benefactors. Under it were signatures, dozens of them, shaky and varied, some barely legible, Wolfe's gaze fixed on the page. "This is monstrous. Welcome to Mercy Row," Dr. Hale said. "We do what we can with what we have. When someone offers a lifeline, you don't ask whether it's attached to a hook. Not when your patients are gasping." I said, "Who drafted this?" Dr. Hale's mouth tightened. "Pike's people brought it. They said it was a standard donor compliance form. They said it protected us." "And it protected him," Wolfe said. Dr. Hale's eyes flashed. "It protected him enough to ruin lives. Patients got surprise visits. Suddenly a man who'd been sober 6 months had a friend show up at his job and ask questions. A woman in a custody fight had a stranger mention her medical history to her ex's lawyer. A young man applying for citizenship was reminded that the government doesn't like surprises." Wolfe's face didn't soften. It hardened into something like granite. "Did you report him? To whom?" She snapped. "The city, the police." Pike had friends, Pike had a ledger, and he had photographs. I'm sure, people smiling beside him like ornaments. If we made noise, he'd make louder noise, and my patients would pay. There was a knock at the door, timid. A nurse stepped in, young with tired eyes and a badge that read Evelyn Soto. She looked at Dr. Hale, then at Wolfe, then at me. Her hands were clasped around a folded paper. Dr. Hale's voice softened a fraction. "Evelyn," the nurse swallowed. "Dr. Hale, I thought you should." Her gaze darted to Wolfe, uncertain. Wolfe said, "You may speak." Evelyn Soto took a step forward and held out the folded paper, but not to Dr. Hale, to Wolfe. "I made a copy," she said quickly. "Before the administrators shred everything they've been cleaning." Dr. Hale's face went tight. "Who?" Evelyn's eyes flicked toward the hall. "Mr. Pike's attorney sent people this morning. They said it was to protect the clinic." Wolfe took the paper. It was another copy of the same form, but with something else attached. A page of typed notes listing names and checkboxes, patients marked with terms like compliant, resistant, useful, and one word that made my skin crawl. Leverage. Wolfe's nostrils flared. "Thank you, Nurse Soto. Your courage may be expensive, but it is necessary." Evelyn's face flushed. "I don't want money. I want him gone." "He is," I said. "He's dead." Her eyes widened. Relief flickered. Then fear rushed back in. "Dead doesn't mean gone," she whispered. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. An astute observation. Dr. Hale sank into her chair, suddenly looking older. "If Pike is dead," she said softly, "then someone will come for what he had. The ledger, the files, the leverage." Wolfe rose. "They will try." He looked at the form again, then at Dr. Hale. "Doctor, Mr. Pike's charity saved your clinic." Her jaw tightened. "Yes." "And then quietly ruined lives afterward," Wolfe said. "Because it was never charity. It was investment." Dr. Hale's eyes met his. "So why are you here? To expose him? He's already dead." Wolfe's voice was low and firm. "Because a man who builds cages does not die without leaving the keys somewhere, and someone has killed him, either to free themselves or to inherit the cages." He turned to me. "Archie." "Yeah." Telephone Inspector Kramer. "Inform him that Mercy Row Clinic is a source of motive, method, and documents. He will secure it." I made a face. "He'll love that." "And," Wolfe added, "telephone Mr. Gregory Larkin. Tell him to be in my office at 8. Dr. Hale's eyes sharpened. "Larkin, what does he have to do with this?" Wolfe's gaze was distant now, already assembling pieces. possibly everything, possibly nothing. But he is frightened, which makes him useful. We left the clinic and stepped back into the damp New York air. The waiting room's murmur followed us, the sound of people hoping for relief without knowing what it costs. On the sidewalk, Wolfe paused. He looked back at the clinic's faded sign. "Kindness," he said, almost to himself, "can be a cage with velvet bars." I nodded, and somebody just stole the key. Wolfe's eyes narrowed toward the grey street, where umbrellas bobbed like dark thoughts. "Then we shall retrieve it, before the next door closes on someone who cannot afford to be trapped." Chapter 5. The bar that keeps secrets. If you want to find out what a man was really doing, you don't go to his office. You go to the places where people talk when they don't think it matters. Wolfe knows that as well as I do, even if he prefers his informants washed and served with a napkin. The name came from the Mercy Row papers, scribbled in a margin beside a patient list, as if someone had written it while thinking of something else. Deke's Corner. Ask Deke. Wolfe disliked it on principle. "A bar," he said, as if I had suggested we consult a sewer. "A bar," I agreed. "They're like confessionals, only the priest charges by the drink." "It will be noisy," Wolfe complained. "It will be useful," I said, "and you don't even have to drink." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "You will go." "That would be the sensible arrangement," I said. "But Kramer's already grouchy about you, staying home, and Mercy Row has put you in a mood where you want to glare at someone in person." Wolfe considered, then stood, which meant the argument was over. "Very well, but we go briefly." We went at 5:30, which is the hour when New York begins to relax its tie and tighten its fists. Deke's Corner sat on a side street where the buildings leaned in close, as if sharing gossip. The sign above the door was faded and honest inside. The light was low, the air smelled of old beer and older stories, and the jukebox in the corner was singing something slow and sad. The regulars didn't. They watched us come in. Wolfe, in a bar, looks like an ambassador who took a wrong turn and expects someone to apologize. I led the way to the bar, found 2 stools that looked as if they had survived prohibition, and sat. Wolfe did not sit on a stool. He occupied it, as if he were doing it a favor. The man behind the bar was thick through the middle, gray at the temples, with forearms like hams and eyes that had seen too much, and remembered only what was profitable. His face suggested he had been born unimpressed, and stayed that way. "Do you write fortune cookies?" His mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "Name's Deke." "Nero Wolfe," Wolfe said, giving his name the way a judge gives a sentence. Deke's eyes narrowed. "I heard of you." Wolfe's eyelids lowered. "Then you will know I am not here to drink." "Then why you here?" Deke asked, wiping the bar with a towel that looked like it had been used to wipe up regret. Wolfe said, "Harlan Pike." The towel paused. Deke's gaze shifted quick, toward the back of the room, then returned. "That's so." "It is," Wolfe said. "He is dead." Deke's mouth flattened. "Yeah, folks been saying." "Folks say many things," Wolfe replied. "You will tell me something accurate." Deke made a sound that could have been a laugh if it had enjoyed itself. "In this place, accurate costs." Wolfe's hand went to his pocket. He produced a bill without looking at it and placed it on the bar. Deke glanced down, then up, and his eyes changed. Money has a way of improving a man's memory. "I ain't gonna weep for Pike," Deke said. Man collected favors like others collected scars, counting, polishing, displaying. Only difference is, scars don't usually come looking for you with a knife. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. He frequented this establishment. "Not often," Deke said. He didn't like the smell. He liked what the smell meant. He'd come in, sit over there. He nodded toward a booth in the back, and talk to people who didn't want to be seen talking to him. Wolfe's voice was soft, such as... Deke's eyes slid again toward the back. "You see that guy?" I turned my head casually, the way you look for a restroom sign. In the booth Deke had indicated sat a man alone, shoulders hunched, hands wrapped around a glass. He looked to be in his 30s, lean, with a face that had been handsome before it learned worry. His glass held water, and he drank it as if it burned. He did not meet Wolfe's eyes. He did not meet mine. He stared at the table like it was safer than the room. "That's Clay Mercer," Deke said quietly, "and he don't want company." Wolfe's gaze stayed on the man. "Yet he is here." "Yeah," Deke muttered. "He's been here 3 nights running water only. Like he's trying to wash something down that won't go." Wolfe turned slightly to me. "Archie." "Already on it," I said, and slid off my stool. I crossed the room without hurry. In bars, hurry looks like trouble and invites it. Clay Mercer stiffened when I reached the booth. "You Clay Mercer?" I asked. He didn't answer. I smiled. "That's fine. I'm Archie Goodwin. Over there is Nero Wolfe, the big fellow who looks like the owner of the building." Clay's throat bobbed. He kept his eyes on the tabletop. "I don't know you." "That's true," I said. "But we know your name, which is worse." His fingers tightened around the water glass. "I'm not in trouble." "That depends on your definition," I said. "If trouble means the police, maybe not. If it means being connected to Harlan Pike, then yes, you're practically wearing a sign." His eyes were bloodshot, exhausted and scared. "He's dead," he whispered. "Yeah," I said, "and dead men don't stop reaching for what they're owed. Not if they left records." Clay flinched. I nodded toward Wolfe. "He wants to talk to you." Clay's jaw tightened. "I don't want to talk." "Then you should have picked a quieter place to sweat," I said. "Come on." He didn't move. So I used the oldest trick in my kit. I leaned in slightly, lowered my voice, and said, "Inspector Kramer is working the case. If he talks to you first, you'll spend the evening in a small room with big questions and no water." Clay's eyes widened. That did it. Fear of Kramer is a civic virtue. He slid out of the booth like a man escaping a verdict and followed me back to the bar. Wolfe watched him approach with the calm attention of a cat watching a mouse that has wandered involuntarily. Clay stopped 2 feet from Wolfe, as if distance might protect him. His eyes flicked to Wolfe's face, then away again. Wolfe did not offer his hand. He offered a question. "Mr. Mercer," Wolfe said, "why did Harlan Pike circle your name twice in his ledger?" Clay froze. That made my spine straighten, because Wolfe had not shown him the ledger. Wolfe had not even said there was a ledger, and yet Clay reacted as if the words had hit something tender. "I don't know what you mean," Clay said. But his voice was thin and false. Wolfe nodded slowly. "You do. Your name appears multiple times. The most recent entry is circled twice, then underlined." Clay's mouth opened, closed. He swallowed hard. I didn't ask him for anything." Wolfe's tone stayed mild. "That is rarely true. If not for yourself, then for someone you love, or someone you fear." Clay's eyes darted to Deke, then to me, then back down. "He helped my brother," he said, barely audible. "What manner of help?" Wolfe asked. Clay licked his lips. "My brother got arrested. Drugs. He was looking at prison. Pike knew somebody. He made it go away." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "A favor, and then..." Clay's hands shook. He set down the water glass with care, as if it might shatter from being noticed. "Then nothing for a while. That is the pattern," Wolfe said. "The follow-up implemented." Clay's face tightened with misery. "He came back last month, smiling, always smiling, like he was doing you another favor just by breathing near you." "What did he want?" I asked. Clay's eyes flashed up, desperate. "He wanted me to sign something." Wolfe's chin lifted. "Future cooperation." Clay flinched hard at the phrase, like it had a hook in it. "Yeah," he said. "It was just paperwork. Said it kept things neat. Said if I cared about my brother, I'd be neat." Wolfe's eyes went cold. "Did you sign?" Clay's shoulders sagged. "Yes." "And then Mr. Pike died," Wolfe said. Clay's mouth trembled. "I didn't kill him." Wolfe did not accuse. He merely observed. "You are frightened." Clay's breath came fast. "Because he was going to ruin me," he said. Clay swallowed again. He said he had proof I'd done something I didn't even remember anymore. He said, "You remember what you did?" Like it was a joke. My stomach tightened. The letter, the fresh ink, the same line. Wolfe's gaze held Clay's face. Did he say that yesterday? Clay's eyes squeezed shut. He called me yesterday morning, told me to come see him, told me to bring water. I stared. Bring water? Clay opened his eyes, panicked. Not like that. He said he was thirsty and didn't trust the office girl. He said bring a bottle. Unopened, he liked controlling things. Wolfe's voice was quiet. Did you go? Clay shook his head violently. No, I didn't. I couldn't. I was scared. I came here instead. Wolfe's eyes moved, briefly to Deke, as if measuring how much of this the bartender had already heard. Then back to Clay. You have given us one important fact, Wolfe said. Mr. Pike asked you to bring water, unopened. That suggests he feared poisoning, or he planned to stage it. Clay's face crumpled. What does that mean? It means, Wolfe said, that your underline in the ledger is not ink. It is a threat pretending to be a thank. You. Clay stared at him, and I could see the idea settling. Pike had not been murdered by accident. Pike had been maneuvering, and someone had maneuvered back. Wolfe rose from the stool, smoothly, decisively. In that dim bar, the movement was like a curtain going up. Mr. Mercer, Wolfe said, you will accompany my assistant to my house now. You will remain there, and you will tell Inspector Kramer exactly what you have told us. No more, no less, when he arrives. Clay's eyes went wide. Kramer? Wolfe's gaze was implacable. You will prefer my house to his precinct. Clay looked at me like a man being offered two kinds of drowning. I smiled. Come on, I said. We've got better chairs. As I led Clay toward the door, I glanced back. Wolfe was looking at Deke again. And you, Wolfe said to the bartender, will consider whether you have heard anything else. If you recall a detail, you may telephone Mr. Goodwin. If you do not, you may be visited by Inspector Kramer, who is less generous with his patients than I. Deke swallowed. Yeah, he muttered. I'll think. Wolfe nodded once, satisfied, and followed us out into the damp New York evening. Behind us, the jukebox kept singing sad. But now the bar's secrets had started to talk. Chapter 6. The favor that started it, Clay Mercer, lived the way men live when they are expecting a knock that isn't friendly. His building was a narrow, tired walk, up that smelled of boiled cabbage and resignation. The hallway light flickered like it was undecided about duty. Clay climbed the stairs ahead of me with the careful tread of someone who has learned not to make noise in his own life. Wolfe followed, breathing disapproval at each step. You see, Wolfe murmured to me on the second landing, why I dislike field work. Because staircases exist, I said. Because poverty exists, Wolfe corrected. It is inefficient. Clay stopped at a door on the 4th floor and produced a key ring that looked like it could open a bank. He worked 3 locks, then a chain, then another lock. I hadn't noticed until it complained. No photos, I remarked. Clay's shoulders tightened. No reason. Inside, the apartment was clean, sparse, and wrong, in a way I couldn't put my finger on at first. Then I saw it. There were no personal edges, no framed picture on the wall, no book left open, no jacket tossed on a chair. It was furnished like a temporary shelter, functional, anonymous, ready to be abandoned in 5 minutes. A man doesn't live like that unless he's running or hiding. Clay gestured toward a small kitchen table. Sit. Wolfe looked at the chair as if it had insulted him, then sat because it was there and because he intends to win. I sat opposite, keeping an eye on Clay's hands. People who are afraid sometimes decide to stop being afraid abruptly, and that's when they become dangerous. Clay poured water from a pitcher into 3 glasses. The pitcher was glass, the water clear, the gesture almost stubbornly normal. Wolfe watched the water the way a cat watches a mouse. You have a fixation, he said. Clay's mouth tightened. I have a memory. He set a glass in front of Wolfe and one in front of me, then kept his own in his hand, as if letting go would be a mistake. He did not sit. He leaned against the counter, arms folded, the water glass pressed to his chest like a shield. Wolfe's voice was mild. Mr. Mercer, you told us Mr. Pike assisted your brother. That was not the beginning. Clay's jaw flexed. Number, then begin properly, Wolfe said. Tell me the favor that started it. Clay's eyes drifted past us to the blank wall. For a moment he looked like he might refuse. Then something in him sagged, the kind of sag that comes when holding a secret has become heavier than the secret itself. My sister, he said quietly. Wolfe's eyelids lowered. Go on. Clay swallowed. This was years ago. She was sick, not a cold, not something you can wait out. She needed surgery, fast. The hospital wanted money we didn't have. I said, insurance. Clay gave a short laugh with no humor. We had insurance the way some people have umbrellas. Technically, it didn't cover what she needed. They said we could apply for assistance. They said it would take months. And you had days, Wolfe said. Clay nodded. His fingers tightened around the water glass. She was 16. She was tough. She didn't complain, but I could see it in her face. My mother was losing her mind. My father had already lost his. Wolfe waited. Wolfe's patience is not kindness, but it can look like it when he wants something. Clay's voice dropped lower. Then a man showed up. Pike, I said. Clay nodded. We didn't know him. We didn't ask. He just appeared. He came to the hospital. Like he belonged there. He wore a suit that made the nurses stand straighter. He talked to a doctor and then to some administrator and then to us. Wolfe's mouth tightened. And he offered salvation. Clay's eyes flashed. He didn't offer. He arranged, he said. Your daughter will have surgery tomorrow. Like he was telling us the weather. Did he say why? Wolfe asked. Clay shook his head. He said he believed in helping families who worked hard. He said he liked to see people get a fair shot. I couldn't help it. That's almost touching. Clay looked at me sharply. It was. That's the part that gets you. He stood there smiling softly, like he was doing it because he wanted to. My mother cried. She hugged him. He let her. He patted her shoulder like a priest. The surgery, the hospital, the follow-ups. He even paid for a specialist consult from out of state. He wrote checks like it was nothing. And your sister lived, Wolfe said. Clay's face softened for the first time, a brief crack in the fear. She lived. She got better. She's married now. She has a kid, she laughs. His voice caught. He cleared his throat hard. He saved her life. Wolfe did not contradict that. He simply watched Clay as if weighing what Clay believed against what the facts would tolerate. How long? Wolfe asked. Between the rescue and the collection, Clay's eyes drifted down. A year. I whistled softly. That's patience. Clay's mouth twisted. That's strategy. He took a sip of water and winced as if it hurt. He came to my job. I was working nights then. Warehouse. He showed up like he had a right to be there. He smiled the same soft smile. He asked how my sister was. He knew her name. He knew the doctor. He knew things he shouldn't have known unless he'd kept track. Wolfe said. He kept records. Clay nodded, then he said, It's time you return the kindness. Just like that. And he asked for money, I asked. Clay barked a short laugh. Money? He shook his head. Number, he said. Money would cheapen it. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. He asked for choices. Clay stared at Wolfe, startled. Yeah. Wolfe's voice was quiet, almost satisfied. Not money. Choices. Quiet errands, private deliveries, unasked loyalty. Clay's shoulders slumped. How do you? I read, Wolfe said, and I listen. Clay's gaze flicked to the door. 3 locks, a chain, another lock, then back to us. He started small. He'd call and say, I need you to bring an envelope to a woman on Riverside. Don't ask questions. Don't deliver it to anyone else. If she's not home, wait. And you did, I said. Clay nodded, miserable. I did, because every time I thought about saying no, I saw my sister in that hospital bed. I saw my mother crying. I saw him standing there, smiling, like he'd been sent. Wolfe's face remained still. The second errand, Clay swallowed. A package, not big, heavy. He told me not to open it. I didn't. I delivered it to a man in a garage. The man looked at me like he could see through me. He didn't say thank you. Gratitude doesn't kneel, I muttered. Clay's eyes met mine. It squeezes, he said. Yeah. Wolfe leaned forward slightly. Did Mr. Pike ever explicitly threaten you? Clay hesitated, then slowly he nodded. Not with words. That's the thing, he didn't need to. He'd just mention details. Like he'd say, your sister's doing well. It would be a shame if her insurance got complicated again. Or he'd say, hospitals don't like unpaid balances. Clay, they get very legal about it. Wolfe's mouth tightened. He converted your gratitude into fear. Clay's voice cracked. He converted my life into his property. Silence fell. The apartment's quiet was thin and tense, like a wire. Wolfe lifted his glass of water and held it for a moment, considering. Then he set it down untouched. Mr. Mercer, Wolfe said, you said you did not go to Pike's office yesterday. Clay shook his head quickly. Number, I swear it. And yet he called you? Wolfe said. He asked you to bring water unopened? Clay's hands trembled, because he was paranoid. Because he thought someone was coming for him. Or because he wanted you connected to the method, Wolfe said. Clay stared. What? Wolfe's eyes were flat. A man who trades in leverage is always arranging responsibility. If he anticipated death, he may have attempted to distribute blame like invitations. Clay went pale. He was setting me up. It is possible, Wolfe said. Or he was pleading for safety in the only language he knew, control. Clay's breathing came faster. He turned and paced 2 steps, then stopped as if he'd hit an invisible wall. He didn't rescue us, Clay said, voice raw. He purchased us. Wolfe nodded once. Yes. Clay's eyes shone, not with tears. He was too tight for tears, but with something close to panic. Then why is he dead? Who kills a man like that? He had people everywhere. Wolfe's gaze held him. A man like that dies for only 2 reasons. Someone believes they can escape him, or someone believes they can replace him. I said, either way, they need what he had. Clay's mouth went dry. The ledger. Wolfe agreed. And the photographs, and the forms. Clay's eyes snapped to Wolfe. You have them? Wolfe did not answer directly. You will remain available. You will not leave this apartment without informing Mr. Goodwin. You will not speak to anyone about what you have told us except Inspector Kramer, whom you will speak to in my presence. Clay stared at him, then gave a small, defeated nod. Okay. Wolfe rose, and the chair complained under him as if relieved. He looked around the bare apartment. No photos, no warmth. Too many locks. You live like a ghost, Wolfe said. Clay's mouth twisted. That's safer. Wolfe's eyes were implacable. Not always. Ghosts are easy to erase. He turned to me. Archie, we have what we require. Telephone Inspector Kramer. Inform him Mr. Mercer is a material witness and should be protected, if he is capable of understanding the concept. I pulled out my phone. I'll use small words. As Wolfe moved toward the door, Clay spoke again. Suddenly, Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe paused without turning. Clay's voice was hoarse. If Pike was buying people, then who bought Pike? Wolfe turned then, and for a second, his eyes were almost gentle, which is as close as Wolfe gets to pity. No one, Wolfe said. That is why he was murdered. We left Clay Mercer in his apartment with the locks and the blank walls and the water that burned, while outside the city kept moving, smiling, and collecting debts that never showed on paper until someone died. Chapter 7. A corner made of kindness. Wolfe has a talent for locating things that other people insist are not there. It isn't magic, it's worse, it's method. The morning after our visit to Clay Mercer's apartment, Wolfe sat in the office with the favors ledger open and the Mercy Row forms beside it, as if he were comparing two competing scriptures. He had not touched his beer. That alone told me Pike's shadow had reached into our house. At 10:30, Fritz brought coffee. Wolfe took a sip, set the cup down, and said, "Archie." "Yeah." Mr. Pike possessed a safe. I blinked. Everybody possesses a safe. It's the modern equivalent of a conscience. Wolfe ignored that. It is not in his desk. It is not in his obvious wall. It is concealed, and it contains what killed him. That's a tidy leap, I said. Wolfe's eyes stayed on the ledger. Not a leap, a progression. A man who trades in leverage does not rely on paper alone. Paper burns, he uses redundancy. He tapped an entry with a thick finger care. Mercer L updated 6 divided by 2 divided by 25. Care, Crowley, Rita. File updated 6 divided by 10 divided by 25. Care, Mercy Row. File updated 11 divided by 7 divided by 23. The word care sat there like a halo on a devil. I said, "That's cute." He called his blackmail files care. Wolfe's mouth tightened. He would not call them blackmail. He would call them help. Preserved. Same poison. Different label. Wolfe nodded once, which for him is practically applause. We will go to Mr. Pike's office. Again, I said. Kramer's going to start charging rent. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Inspector Kramer will be informed after the fact. It will improve his digestion. We went at noon, which is an hour Wolfe prefers to spend with duck and silence. But he had decided Pike was more offensive than hunger. The Pike Building's lobby looked even more anxious than before. Word spreads fast when a man who arranged salvation is found dead without arranging his own. Miss Vale admitted us with a glance over her shoulder, as if expecting the walls to remember. They searched, she whispered. But they didn't know the painting was the door. They've been here again, she whispered. Who? I asked. Mr. Crowley's people, boxes, shredders. Her voice shook. They said they were protecting Mr. Pike's clients. Wolfe's face hardened. They are protecting themselves. We entered Pike's private office. It had been cleaned. The way crime scenes are cleaned when someone wants the story tidy. The carpet had been brushed. The desk cleared. The decanter gone. The room looked innocent, which is always suspicious. Wolfe stood still, absorbing it. Then his gaze moved to the wall behind the desk. A painting hung there, an oily sunrise over water, the kind of cheerful landscape people buy to prove they are not criminals. The sun in it was too perfect, the water too calm. It looked like it lied. Wolfe walked to it, studied the frame, then leaned in as if sniffing. He did not touch it at first. He never touches first. He thinks first. Archie, he said softly, that painting has been moved. I stepped close. There was a faint scuff in the wallpaper at the bottom right corner, like a shoe had nudged the wall. The hook had a bright scratch, fresh enough to show someone had recently lifted the frame. You think Crowley's crew was looking? I said. They were, Wolfe replied. They did not find. He put both hands on the frame and lifted it off the hook with the delicacy of a man handling a corpse he intends to insult later. Behind it was a small section of wall, paneling with a seam so fine, you'd miss it unless you were looking for a lie. The latch was disguised as part of the frame's backing, easy to miss unless you already believed a safe existed. Wolfe's thick finger found a nearly invisible latch. The panel swung open. A safe stared back at us, flush with the wall, the kind you install when you want your secrets to breathe. Quietly. I exhaled. Well, I'll be... Yes, Wolfe said. Now we require the means. He did not glance at me. He expected me to supply the means, because that is what Archie Goodwin exists for, to be the hands Wolfe doesn't want to dirty. I searched the desk area, checked the drawers, and found nothing. Then I remembered the small key we had taken, too small for a desk, too specific to be random. I held it up. Wolfe's eyes flicked to it. Try. The key slid into the safe's auxiliary lock smoothly, like it belonged. I turned it. There was a click, quiet, decisive, but the safe still required a combination. Wolfe watched the dial, as if it were about to confess. "The combination," he murmured, "will not be trivial." Mr. Pike did not trust triviality. "Dates," I offered. Wolfe shook his head. He trusted numbers that meant something to others, not to himself. His eyes drifted to the painting, the lying sunrise, and then to the ledger entry marked Mercy Row Clinic, 4 divided by 18 divided by 23. "April 18th, I said. "Try it," Wolfe ordered. I dialed 4 to 1 -8, -2 -3, nothing. Wolfe's face did not change, but his eyes sharpened. Again, I tried 4 to 1 -8, -2 -2 -2 -3. The safe clicked and released with a sound that made my skin prickle, like a lock giving up. Wolfe's mouth tightened into something almost satisfied. "A date of virtue," he said. He wanted his safe opened with charity. I pulled the door open. Inside were not stacks of cash or jewels. There were tapes, actual cassette tapes, neatly labeled in Pike's careful hand, each in a case with a typed index card. There were also folders, thick ones, each marked with a name and stamped in red at the top. Wolfe's nostrils flared. "The archive." I lifted one tape. The label read, "Mercer, return kindness. 5 divided by 15 divided by 25. Another, Crowley, Rhode Island, tar, compliance. 6 divided by 10 divided by 25. Another, Mercy Row, forms 11 divided by 7 divided by 23. And one that made my throat tighten, Larkin account settled, 6 divided by 18 divided by 25. I looked at Wolfe. He was watching my face, not the tapes. He knew what that last one meant to me, if Larkin had an account. And Pike recorded it. Then Pike had leverage on a man who thought he owned the world. Wolfe said, "Bring them." We carried the tapes and folders, quietly, quickly. Out of Pike's office. Miss Vale watched us like a drowning woman watching a rope. "Will this help?" she asked. Wolfe paused, looked at her, and for once his voice wasn't contemptuous. "It will illuminate." Back at the brownstone, Wolfe treated the tapes with more care than some people treat their children. We set up the old tape recorder, a relic Wolfe, kept because he distrusts modern devices, and also because he enjoys having a reason to dislike them. I inserted the first tape. Pike's voice filled the room. It was warm as a blanket and sharp as a razor. "Clay," the recorded Pike said, gentle, almost affectionate. "Don't tense up. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because I helped you. Remember, your sister's surgery tomorrow." I said, and it happened. That was me. There was a pause, and in it you could hear Clay breathing, fast, trapped. Pike continued, still soft. "Now I need you to return the kindness, not money. Money is crude, choices, quiet errands. You're good at being quiet. That's why I'm asking you." Another pause. Then Pike's voice shifted. Not louder, not angry, just colder. "Remember what I did," he said. "Don't make me explain it to others." Wolfe's eyes closed briefly, as if the words were sour on his tongue. I stopped the tape. "He doesn't threaten with dirt," I said. "He threatens with the story of being helped. He makes their gratitude radioactive." Wolfe nodded. "Yes, if he exposes them, they appear ungrateful, or criminal, or weak. He weaponizes their rescue." We opened a folder marked Care, Mercer. Inside were hospital invoices, insurance correspondence, a surgeon's report, and a copy of a check, Pike's check, paid in full. Tucked behind it was a page titled Potential Pressure Points, typed Clinical, Family Dependence Employment, Vulnerability, Prior Minor Offense. Expunged sister's medical history, confidential. It was all help. Arranged so it could later become harm. Another folder, Care, Crowley, Rhode Island, tar. It held letters, bank transfers, photographs of Rita at Mercy Row events, and a memo about her marriage. The kind of memo no decent man should possess, unless someone paid him to be indecent. Half the clinic had files, names, conditions, signatures. Private lives reduced to leverage, stamped and filed under care like a joke with teeth. Wolfe sat back, heavy in his chair. He did not blackmail with dirt, he said. No, I agreed. He blackmailed with kindness. Wolfe's eyes narrowed, distant now, assembling the pieces into something sharper. And that, he said, is why he was murdered. Dirt can be denied. Kindness cannot. It binds. I looked down at the tape labeled Larkin. Account settled. 6 divided by 18 divided by 25. Want to listen? I asked. Wolfe's gaze flicked to it, then to the door, as if he could already hear trouble climbing the steps. Not yet, he said. What are we waiting for? Wolfe's mouth tightened. For the proper moment. Mr. Pike arranged his leverage carefully. Someone, Archie, has attempted to inherit it. And if they can't inherit it, I said, they'll try to destroy it. Wolfe nodded. Or destroy us. The doorbell rang downstairs. Fritz's voice drifted up from the hall. Inspector Kramer, Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe did not move. He looked at the tapes, at the folders stamped care, at Pike's warm, razor voice trapped in plastic. Then he said quietly, Now, Archie, we shall see who believes that help is ownership. And for the first time since Harlan Pike's death, I felt certain of one thing, whatever Corner Pike had built out of kindness. It was about to collapse, on someone's head. Chapter 8, The Night of the Thank. Ucard Kramer arrived with his hat dripping and his patience already soaked through. He took one look at the tape recorder on Wolfe's desk and the open safe contents, stacked like a banker's nightmare, and his eyes narrowed. What the hell is this? He demanded. Wolfe's tone was courteous in the way a locked door is courteous. The reason you have not solved your murder. Kramer stepped forward, saw the care stamps, and swore softly. One of those swears a man uses when his stomach drops. You took this from Pike's office, he barked. I rescued it, Wolfe corrected. From those who were shredding it. Kramer's jaw worked. I should haul you in. You should, Wolfe agreed. But you will not, because you want what is on these tapes more than you want to exercise your authority. Kramer glared, then exhaled hard. All right. What's on them? Wolfe lifted a thick finger. First you will provide me your toxicology report. Kramer's eyes narrowed further. You think you can bargain? Wolfe's gaze was implacable. I know I can. Kramer muttered something unfit for Fritz's ears, then said, fast, acting sedative and a cardiac trigger, colorless, tasteless. They're saying it could have been in water, small dose, enough to stop him within minutes. Wolfe nodded, as if confirming an entry in a column. Water, he said softly. Convenient, I said. So, the killer didn't have to fight him, just had to get him to drink. Kramer's scowl deepened. And you got a room full of suspects who had access. Your friend Clay, that woman Rita. Lilfis strip, Mr. Gregory Larkin, Wolfe said. Yes. Kramer's eyes flicked to the hall. They hear. Wolfe nodded toward the front room. They are waiting. They will enter when I permit it. Kramer made a sound of disbelief. You're running a show. Wolfe's mouth tightened. I am conducting an inquiry, you may observe. That was Wolfe's way of offering Kramer the privilege of being irrelevant. At 8 precisely, Fritz ushered them in. Rita Crowley first, tight, lipped, and too composed. Benton Crowley behind her, looking as if the house itself might sue him. Gregory Larkin, pale under his money, and Clay Mercer, who looked like he hadn't slept since the invention of daylight. Wolfe sat behind the desk, hands steepled, the tapes and folders arranged with careful menace. I took my chair, pen ready, because Wolfe's office gatherings are part trial, part theater, and I'm the court reporter with the best seat. Wolfe regarded them. You are all connected to Harlan Pike, he said. You are all beneficiaries of his charity, and you are all now endangered by the residue of his methods. Rita's chin lifted. We're here because you ordered us. I invited you, Wolfe corrected. An invitation from me is safer than one from Inspector Kramer. Kramer stood near the door, arms folded looking like a bulldog invited to a tea party. Wolfe gestured toward the tape recorder. Mr. Pike recorded his transactions. He believed his voice could substitute for morality. Rita's eyes flicked to the tapes. Her hands tightened in her lap. Wolfe selected a cassette. Crowley, Rhode Island tar compliance, 6 divided by 10 divided by 25, and inserted it. Pike's voice filled the room again, warm and flattering. "Rita," Pike said, "you're loyal. That's rare. People talk about loyalty, but you understand it. You understand that kindness requires structure. You keep things running. You keep the clinic grateful. You keep your husband calm. I appreciate that." Rita's face held steady for 3 seconds, then cracked. It wasn't a sob. It was a twitch at the corner of her mouth, a blink too fast, like a mask slipping. Wolfe stopped the tape. "Mrs. Crowley," Wolfe said softly, "Mr. Pike praised your loyalty. Why?" Rita's voice came out sharp. "Because I did my job." "Your job," Wolfe said, "included collecting signatures for future cooperation." Rita's eyes flashed toward Dr. Hale's copied form on Wolfe's desk. "That was legal. It was coercion," Wolfe corrected. Benton Crowley's face tightened. "Mr. Wolfe, my wife was an employee. She followed instructions." Wolfe's gaze pinned him. "A lawyer who hides behind obedience is a poor lawyer." Benton flushed. Larkin stared at the carpet. Clay's hands shook. Wolfe turned back to Rita. "Tell us about the thank you cards." Rita swallowed. "People wrote them." "And you filed them," Wolfe said, "stamped and catalogued, like evidence." Rita's voice thinned. "Harlan liked order." "He liked proof," Wolfe said. "Now, what was planned for this week?" Rita's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Nothing." Wolfe's tone stayed mild. "Mrs. Crowley, if you lie, I will play another tape." That did it. "A gratitude dinner." Rita nodded, eyes fixed on her hands. "He called it that. He wanted to celebrate. He wanted to show the clinic's donors how their money changed lives." Dr. Hale's form lay on Wolfe's desk like a silent witness. Clay flinched. Larkin said hoarsely, "What does that have to do with murder?" Wolfe looked at him. "Everything." Rita's voice gained speed, as if speaking quickly might make it less real. "He booked a hall. He arranged a stage, a microphone, a smiling speech. He was going to invite everyone he'd helped. People from the clinic, people from his private work. He wanted them all in one room." "And then," I prompted. Rita's eyes flicked up, desperate, and then he was going to ask. Wolfe's gaze was steady, publicly. Rita nodded, almost a sob now. "He said it was time to formalize gratitude. He said people were getting lazy, forgetting what he'd done. He wanted to remind them in front of witnesses." Clay's face went gray. Wolfe opened a folder, took out a printed list, and held it up. The guest list. Clay's eyes locked onto it like a man staring at his own sentence. Wolfe placed it on the desk. Names ran down the page, some circled, some tagged with notes, and there, near the middle, was Mercer, Clay highlighted in bright marker, as if someone had already selected tomorrow's exhibit. Clay whispered. "He was going to use you," Wolfe said calmly, "as an example, as a demonstration, as a warning." Ritter's voice broke. "He said some people needed to be shown what gratitude looked like. He said if one person cracked in front of the others, the rest would behave for years." Benton Crowley's face was pale now. "That's insane." "That is business," Wolfe said. "Pike's business." Larkin's hands clenched. "He wouldn't do that to me." Wolfe's gaze slid to him like a blade. "Would he not, Mr. Larkin? Your name appears on a tape labeled, 'Account Settled.' Do you believe you were exempt from his appetite?" Larkin's face tightened, but he said nothing. Silence can confess as loudly as words when Wolfe is listening. Wolfe leaned back. His voice was cold and precise. He turned gratitude into a courtroom and called it charity. Kramer shifted, restless. "So Pike planned to squeeze them. Big deal. That doesn't tell me who killed him." Wolfe looked at him. It tells you motive, Inspector. A gratitude dinner is not a celebration. It is an ambush, and ambushes inspire preemptive strikes, Ritter whispered. He was excited. He said it would be his masterpiece. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. And someone ensured he would not perform it. Clay's breathing came fast. Was I the victim? Wolfe's gaze held him. You were the next victim in a suit, wearing tomorrow's humiliation today. Clay's eyes shone with panic and anger. He was going to ruin me in front of everyone he owned. Not owned, Wolfe corrected. Owned by kindness. Rita's hands trembled. He told me to prepare thank. You cards, hundreds. He said each person would get one. Their name, their story, their debt, polished and presented. I felt my skin prickle, and one of those cards ended up pinned to his lapel. Rita's head snapped up. I didn't pin anything. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Number, but you know who would. Rita stared at him, then at Benton Crowley, then at Larkin. Her mouth opened, closed, her eyes filled. He said the cards were a gift, she whispered. But they weren't gifts. They were collars. Wolfe nodded once. Indeed. He turned slightly to Kramer. Inspector, the murder weapon was poison administered in water. The killer needed access, opportunity, and motive strong enough to act before the gratitude dinner. That narrows your circle considerably, Kramer grunted. Still too many. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. Not for long. He looked back at the group, heavy and calm, like a judge ready to call the next witness. Now, Wolfe said, we will discuss who knew about the dinner, who feared it most, and who had reason to pin a thank. You card to a dead man's lapel as a final polite accusation. No one spoke. In the silence, Pike's recorded voice seemed to linger in the air, warm as a blanket, sharp as a razor, like a ghost that smiled while it tightened the rope. Chapter 9. The killer who didn't hate. If there is one thing I've learned from living with Nero Wolfe, it is that he can be perfectly still and still be in pursuit. He sat behind his desk after the office gathering, heavy and composed, while the rest of us scattered in various directions, Kramer to his warrants, Larkin to his ulcers, Benton Crowley to his legal vocabulary, and Rita to whatever corner of her life she could still call hers. Clay Mercer was supposed to stay in our house. That was Wolfe's instruction, which in my experience is usually the same thing as a law of physics. You may violate it, but you will suffer consequences. Clay violated it. At midnight, Fritz found the front door bolted, and the chair in the hall exactly as I had placed it. But Clay's coat was gone from the rack, and the chair had been shifted, just enough to tell me a man had moved it carefully, trying not to make noise. Clay wasn't brave. He was desperate. Desperate men don't stomp. They slip. I found the note on the kitchen table, 3 words, written like an apology. I can't wait. I took it into the office. Wolfe read it, set it down, and did not ask me to chase. That was how I knew he already knew where Clay had gone. He will go to Mercy Row, Wolfe said, voice flat. He believes the clinic is where his debt began, and therefore where it might be forgiven. Debt isn't forgiven, I said. It's transferred. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Precisely. He did not sleep. Wolfe can sit in his chair for hours without moving, as if his bulk is anchored to the floor and his mind roams the city on its own. At 7:30, when the sky was a pale, wet sheet and New York looked like it had been washed without being cleaned, Wolfe stood. Come, he said. We went to Mercy Row Clinic without calling ahead, because Wolfe had no interest in being warned off by receptionists. We entered through the side door, past the waiting room's morning line of patients clutching paperwork and hope, and moved toward the rear service alley where deliveries came and trash left. The alley was narrow, damp, and full of the smells the city prefers not to acknowledge: sour food, wet cardboard, disinfectant, and that particular metallic edge that says something has ended, and nobody has written the paperwork yet. Behind the dumpsters, a figure stood with his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the wind. Clay Mercer. He didn't turn when we approached. He didn't run. That was the first odd thing. Clay had been running since Pike paid for his sister's surgery. He had run in place. He had run quietly. He had run inside his own skin, but now he stood still, as if stillness were the last option he hadn't tried. Wolfe stopped 6 feet away, as if giving Clay space to choose whether to speak or break. Clay turned his head slightly. His face looked hollow, but there was something else there too. Relief, like confession, was the last door left unlocked. "You knew I'd come here," Clay said. Wolfe's voice was mild. "You are predictable, Mr. Mercer. Desperation is a reliable compass." Clay gave a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, it points to the same place every time." I glanced at the ground. A small white rectangle lay near Clay's shoes, damp at the corners. A card. A thank you card. It hit me like cold water. Clay saw my eyes and nudged it with his toe. "I brought it," he said. Wolfe's eyelids lowered. "Naturally you did." Clay's jaw tightened. "I didn't kill him." Wolfe said nothing. Clay swallowed. "I didn't." Wolfe's tone was almost gentle, which on him is an alarming development. "Mr. Mercer, I did not say you killed him. I said you are predictable. Explain why you have chosen to behave like a guilty man." Clay's shoulders sagged. "Because Pike made me guilty," he said. "He made me guilty the minute he paid that hospital bill." Wolfe's gaze stayed on him, steady and patient. Clay's voice grew faster, rougher. "After the dinner plan, after he started talking about putting us all on a stage, he came to me again 2 days ago. Not the call yesterday, before that." "You did not tell us," I said. Clay flinched. "I didn't want it real." Wolfe said, "Tell it." Clay stared at the dumpster lid, as if it might offer mercy. He said there was a problem. A shipment clinic, supplies. "A scam," he said. "Someone was going to take the fall, and he'd decided it should be me." I felt my mouth go dry. "Why you?" Clay's laugh came out sharp. "Because I'm easy. Because I'm already compromised. Because I already owe." Wolfe's voice was quiet. "He demanded you accept blame for theft." Clay nodded. "Not even theft. Some paperwork trick," he said. "The clinic got billed for equipment. It never got," he said. "The city was sniffing around." He said if the wrong people got caught, the whole place would lose funding. "And he would lose leverage," Wolfe said. Clay's eyes snapped to him. "Yeah, he didn't care about the clinic. He cared about the signatures, the files, the list." Wolfe waited. Clay's throat worked. He said if I didn't do it, if I didn't sign the statement he'd prepared, he'd cut off my sister. I stared. "Cut off your sister's care? She's fine now." Clay's face twisted. "Not completely. She has follow-ups, monitoring meds, stuff we still can't afford without help. Pike had arranged discounts, a doctor, a clinic connection. He made it so it looked like kindness still happening. He said he could undo it with one phone call. He said hospitals. Remember unpaid balances. He said he'd explain things if he had to." Wolfe's eyes were cold. He threatened to make his kindness retroactive. Clay nodded miserably. He said, "Remember what I did. Don't make me explain it to others." Same line, like it was scripture. The wind pushed a wet scrap of paper across the alley. Clay watched it skitter, and then stopped it with his shoe, absently, like stopping it might stop the whole story from moving forward. "So," I said. "You panicked." Clay's eyes met mine. "I didn't hate him," he said. "That's the sick part. I didn't wake up wanting him dead. I woke up wanting him to stop smiling at me." Wolfe's voice was almost a murmur. "And you believed a polite gesture could soften a monster." Clay nodded toward the card on the ground. "I thought if I brought it to him, if I made it like a thank you, like I was grateful, maybe he'd ease up. Maybe he'd pick someone else." I bent and picked up the card carefully by the edges, damp but readable. The same neat words. "Thank you for your kindness." I looked at Clay. "You wrote this?" He swallowed. "Yeah, I bought it at a drugstore. I wrote it last night, I thought. I don't know what I thought. That manners matter." Wolfe's gaze held Clay's face, heavy and pitiless in its clarity. Monsters love manners, Wolfe said, because manners keep people quiet while they are being crushed. Clay's eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. He was too tired for tears. I went to his office yesterday, Clay said suddenly. Midday, Miss Vale buzzed me in because Pike had told her to expect me. Not for the water. For this. He nodded at the card. I didn't even go in. I stood outside, and I hung up. Then you did not enter, Wolfe said. No, Clay whispered. I couldn't. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. But someone wanted it to appear that you might have. Someone wanted your name near the water. Clay stared at him. Who? Wolfe did not answer. He rarely gives the prize before the race is done. Instead, he asked, Did you give this card to anyone else? Clay hesitated. The hesitation was the loudest sound in the alley. I said, Clay. He swallowed hard. Rita, he admitted. I saw her outside the clinic last night. She was smoking, shaking. I didn't know what else to do. I told her Pike was going to destroy me. I showed her the card. I said I was going to give it to him as armor. Wolfe's voice was very soft. And what did she say? Clay's eyes flicked away. She said it was pointless. That Pike didn't get soft, that he only got hungrier. And then? Wolfe pressed. I don't know, Clay insisted too quickly. She told me to go home. She told me to stay out of it. She said she'd handle it. I felt the air tighten. Handle it how? Clay shook his head, helpless. I don't know. I left. Wolfe's gaze stayed on him, and in it was the calm certainty of a man who has just been handed the missing hinge. Mr. Mercer, Wolfe said, you have not killed Harlan Pike, but you have provided the murderer with a prop. Clay's face went blank with horror. Number, yes, Wolfe said. A thank. You card pinned to a lapel is theatre. You brought the costume piece. Someone else staged the performance. Clay's breath came fast. Then what do I do? Wolfe's voice hardened. You do as you are told. You will come with us now. You will be seen by Inspector Kramer in my office, and you will tell him precisely what you have told me, especially the part about Rita Crowley saying she would handle it. Clay's mouth opened, then closed. He nodded once like a man signing away his last illusion. As we turned to leave the alley, I looked again at the card in my hand. A polite rectangle of paper, soft around the edges from rain, with words that sounded civil and felt like a fist. Manners, I thought, are wonderful. They keep the screams from showing. Chapter 10. Interest collected. Wolfe does not raise his voice when the net tightens. He does not need volume. He has inevitability. Back at the brownstone, Clay Mercer sat in the chair opposite Wolfe's desk with his hands locked together, so hard his knuckles looked polished. Inspector Kramer stood to the side, pretending he was there by choice. Rita Crowley sat rigid, her eyes too bright. Benton Crowley hovered near the door, as if proximity to exit were a legal defense. Gregory Larkin watched everything with the guarded attention of a man counting what he might lose. Wolfe regarded them as if they were exhibits he had already labeled. Before we proceed, Wolfe said, a clarification. The question before us is not who despised Harlan Pike. It is who could no longer afford him. Kramer snorted. Same thing. No, Wolfe said. Hatred is emotion. This murder required arithmetic. Clay flinched as if Wolfe had said his name. Wolfe opened the favors ledger, turned pages with fat fingers that were surprisingly gentle, and stopped where Clay's name appeared, circled twice and underlined. That underline, Wolfe said, was not ink. I shifted forward. We noticed that at the bar. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. Indeed, ink soaks into paper, this mark pressed into it. A hard point drawn with pressure, an impressed groove. The sort of underline a man makes when his hand is shaking, and he is trying to make a decision permanent. Clay's throat bobbed. Wolfe continued. The torn page, with the word leverage burned into the remaining stub, also not ink burned deliberately. The implement was small, hot, and controlled. A lighter would have scorched unevenly. This was pressed, like a heated coin or metal edge. Kramer's eyes narrowed. "So what?" "So," Wolfe said patiently. "The man who marked those pages had time with the ledger, privacy with the ledger, and an obsessive need to announce the concept that was destroying him." Wolfe's gaze went to Clay and stayed there. Clay stared at his hands. His breathing was audible in the room. Wolfe went on as if Clay were not present. Harlan Pike was poisoned. A colorless, tasteless agent administered in water. To deliver it, the killer required access to Pike's office and a reasonable excuse to be near his desk. Rita's voice cracked. Half the city had an excuse. Wolfe looked at her. Only a few had one that would not attract suspicion. He lifted a folder stamped Care, Mercer L., and slid it toward Kramer without looking away from Clay. "This file," Wolfe said, "contains the true motive. Not dirt, not scandal. Help. Help transformed into a chain." Kramer flipped through the pages, his face tightening as he read the hospital invoices and the typed list of pressure points. Clay's eyes closed for a second. Wolfe said, "Mr. Pike paid for surgery that saved a young woman's life. He then returned a year later and converted that act into ownership. He demanded errand work, private deliveries, unasked loyalty. And finally, Wolfe's voice hardened. He demanded a sacrifice." Clay whispered, "I didn't want." Wolfe cut him off gently and mercilessly. "He demanded you accept blame for a shipment fraud connected to Mercy Row Clinic. You told me this in the alley." Clay's head jerked up. "I told you because you were attempting to unburden yourself without surrendering the conclusion," Wolfe said. "I felt Kramer shift, interested now in a way that had nothing to do with procedure." Wolfe lifted one cassette and held it up between finger and thumb. "On this recording, Mr. Pike tells you, 'Remember what I did. Don't make me explain it to others.' That phrase appears as a letter as well, fresh, loud ink. It was Pike's chosen instrument. It requires no obscenity, no threat. It simply turns gratitude into a public accusation." Rita's lips parted. "The dinner." Wolfe nodded. "The gratitude dinner was the culmination. A stage, a microphone, a smiling speech, then the ask presented as virtue, and if anyone refused, the refusal would be witnessed." Pike intended to squeeze his beneficiaries in a room full of applause and call it charity. He looked at Clay. "You were highlighted on the guest list. You were to be tomorrow's example wearing today's suit." Clay's face went gray. Kramer growled, "That's motive. Fine. Where's the proof he did it?" Wolfe's eyes did not leave Clay. "We will arrive at it." He reached into the stack of items we had taken from Pike's safe and drew out a small plastic bag. Inside was a drugstore thank you card, the kind you buy with cough drops and aspirin. "I asked Mr. Goodwin," Wolfe said, "to confirm where such cards are sold near Mr. Mercer's residence. There are 2 establishments. One has a clerk who remembers Mr. Mercer purchasing stationery late at night. The clerk is prepared to say so." Clay's mouth opened, then shut. Wolfe continued, "Mr. Mercer told me he wrote the card as a shield. That was not entirely false. He did write it, but he did not write it to soften Pike." Clay's shoulders slumped, as if the chair had finally become too heavy. "You wrote it," Wolfe said, "to label the act you were about to commit, so that when Pike was found, the message would be clear, even if your name was not attached. A thank you card pinned to a lapel is not gratitude. It is indictment. It says, 'Your kindness did this.'" Rita made a small sound, half gasp, half sob. Wolfe turned one more page in the ledger and tapped the key notation I had first seen beneath the book. The key taped beneath the ledger was placed after the body was found. Mr. Crowley claimed it was not there when he arrived. Miss Vale did not notice it earlier. That meant someone returned to the office after the discovery, or was present and had opportunity, placing it to guide attention. Kramer's eyes narrowed at Benton Crowley. Wolfe shook his head slightly. "Not you, Mr. Crowley. You were too concerned with preventing inspection. Your instinct was concealment, not direction." He looked back at Clay. "You wanted the safe found." Clay swallowed, and his voice came out ragged. "I wanted it to stop." Wolfe nodded once, as if that had been entered into the record. "You wanted Pike's machinery exposed, and you wanted, also," Wolfe's voice turned colder, to be able to tell yourself you were not merely killing a man. You were destroying a system. Clay's hand shook. You don't know. I know the mathematics, Wolfe said. The room held its breath. Clay stared at Wolfe, and something in his face collapsed. Not courage, not pride, just exhaustion. Okay, he said almost calmly. Okay. He looked at Kramer, then at the floor, then at the thank. You card in Wolfe's hand as if it were a mirror. I did it, Clay said. Rita's mouth opened, soundless. Benton Crowley's face went blank. Larkin's eyes shut for a moment, as if he'd been waiting to hear it and hated that he had. Kramer stepped forward. You poisoned him? Clay nodded once. I didn't do it out of rage. He let out a breath that sounded like surrender. I did it out of math. Wolfe's eyes remained steady. Clay continued, words spilling now that the dam had cracked. One more kind request. And my sister would die. Not because she was sick, because Pike would make her sick again. He'd pull the doctor, pull the discounts. Call it adjusting arrangements. He'd say it was fair because he'd helped us once. He'd say we owed him for the rest of our lives. His voice tightened. He wanted me to take the blame for that shipment scam. He wanted me to sign something that would bury me, and he said if I didn't, he'd explain things to the hospital, to the clinic. To whoever listened, he'd make my sister's life a bargaining chip again. Clay's eyes shone now, finally spilling tears he hadn't allowed himself. He didn't rescue us. He purchased us. Wolfe's face did not soften, but his voice lowered. And you decided to repossess yourself. I brought an unopened bottle like he asked. Store, sealed. I also had a vial in my pocket. He watched the bottle, not my hands. He thought he was being careful. He thought he was controlling the water. Clay gave a jagged laugh. I switched it. I had a small vial. I poured when he turned to pick up a folder. He drank because he always drank when he talked, like it was part of the performance. Kramer's voice was hard. And the card. Clay's shoulders sagged. After he went down, I pinned it to his lapel, not to thank him, to mark it, so nobody would call him a victim, so they'd know what kind of man he was. Wolfe's eyes were cold. You sought to make motive visible. Clay whispered, yeah, because he hid behind manners, behind smiles, behind care. Wolfe closed the ledger with a firm, final sound that made the room feel cleaner. A favor, Wolfe said, is not a favor when it has a hook. Kramer moved in, took Clay by the arm, and snapped on cuffs with the satisfaction of a man who finally has something solid in his hands. Clay did not resist. He looked, if anything, relieved, as if the last lock had clicked shut and he could stop listening for footsteps. Rita's face was wet now. She stared at Clay with a complicated horror that included, I thought, recognition. Benton Crowley looked away, already calculating his next argument. Larkin remained still, as if any movement might draw attention to his own ledger page. Kramer jerked his head at Wolfe. You're going to hand over those tapes. Wolfe's tone was flat. You will receive what is necessary for prosecution. The remainder will be handled with discretion. Kramer grimaced. Discretion, he muttered, as if it tasted bad. But he didn't argue. Even Kramer, when faced with a mountain of poison labeled charity, prefers to step carefully. When they were gone, the office fell quiet in the way it always does. After Wolfe has finished arranging the world, not peaceful, exactly, but ordered. I looked at the closed ledger, at the stack of care files, at the tape recorder sitting mute, like a witness who had said enough. That's it, I asked. Wolfe leaned back in his chair, heavy and tired now that the work was done. It is finished. Clay killed him, I said slowly, tasting it. And you call that satisfying? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Satisfaction is not the objective. Clarity is Mr. Mercer did not kill from malice. He killed from desperation manufactured by Pike's commerce. And Pike, I asked. What about the rest of the people in those files? Wolfe's mouth tightened. They will be spared further exploitation if Inspector Kramer performs his duty with unusual competence. That's a prayer, I said. Wolfe ignored that. He reached for his beer at last, took a small sip, and set it down. "Archie," he said, "there will always be men like Pike. They do not see themselves as villains. They see themselves as benefactors who expect gratitude to behave." I nodded toward the window. Outside, the rain had started again, steady as ever, washing the streetlights into blurred confessions. "Yeah," I said. "The city still thinks it can clean things up." Wolfe's gaze followed mine to the rain, then returned to the calm interior of his office. "The city," he said, "believes many things." He closed his eyes, just for a moment, as if to shut out the damp world and return to orchids and order. And in that pause, with the ledger shut and the hook finally visible, the case settled into the only kind of ending New York ever truly offers. Not innocence restored, just interest collected.